The incredible and sad tale of innocent Erendira and her heartless grandmother is one of the first successful stories Gabriel Garcia Marquez wrote in 1972, which was partly based in true facts the author came across in his life. The story, to simplify, is about a young girl who is a kind of slave of her grandmother, who by exhaustion falls asleep in the light of a candle that by a misfortune wind sets the house on fire, destroying it. The grandmother will force the granddaughter to repay for the damages, making a business out of the sexual exploitation of the young girl, who will become an itinerant commodity and a vagrant prostitute. Later on, a young man falls in love with her and will try to set her free, killing her grandmother. Ultimately, he succeeds, but the girl takes the fortune that her grandmother obtained from her and runs, disappearing and leaving behind her lover. Gabriel Garcia Marquez tells this miserable story in a magic and surreal way. And this is a quotation from an article on this story. A bizarre odyssey across the desert, a traveling carnival which slowly expands to include Indian bearers, a photographer on a bicycle, a brass band, and numerous ox carts packed with trinkets. This is a story of oppression represented by the grandmother, but also by elements of nature playing the tragedy threads. The description of nature environment resembles the region of Guajira in Colombia, where desert and sea meet. This story can be interpreted as a political fable of exploitation, the exploitation of labor by capital, of the young by the old, and of passivity by ruthlessness. The author will use these characters in other novels as well as the magic ambience, which is recurrent in his works. And this is another quotation from eNotes. He has created a fictional world which is the subject matter of all these novels and stories, so that the same characters appear in different works and the same strange physical and metaphysical phenomena occur in all these pieces of fiction. Magic realism is a literary genre associated to a number of writers, but became specially highlighted in Gabriel Garcia Marquez novels. There's much imagery and symbolism in Gabo's novels. The dreams are a kind of premonitions. Nature is also a character in the story, like the wind that brings misfortune, the desert and the burning sun as the arid solitude and suffocating life of Erendira, an environment that is hostile and oppressive like the self-centered and dominant grandmother. The magic is brought by unlikely powers in nature and characters, the tragic premonitions of the wind, the oranges that breed diamonds, imagery of smugglers, the power of Ulysses to turn glasses blue, his lonely maritime eyes, symbolizing the power of transformation of Erendira's life. And this is another quotation. From colonial days, great smugglers controlled the country. The Dutch, the English, the North Americans all traded with them, and people came down from the Andes to buy contraband. In that universe, the Indian culture was at the center, and that's what gives the desert world its peculiarity. I met a Guajiro and asked him, "What do you do?" And with great pride he answered, "I'm a smuggler." I'd always thought of smuggling as clandestine, dishonest. Here it is the most honorable profession one can have. The magical and fantastic features that characterize Gabriel Garcia Marquez novels breed in his infancy and the stories of his grandparents. His writing is characterized by and intra-textuality in a magic universe parallel to reality. Some characters reappear across his novels, establishing a connection and continuity between his works. The character of the grandmother is the strongest in this story, where she plays the inversion of the traditional role of the grandmother, a deconstruction of the protective matriarch, transmitting the wisdom, tradition, and experience to the new generation. On the contrary, in this story, the grandmother is a heartless, cruel, and evil character, abusing others for her own greed and wealth. This grandmother seems detached of roots and identity. She wanders across the desert and pueblos. She travels around in search of profit. This detachment is also effective towards her granddaughter, who is a commodity to be traded. It reveals a perversion and disturbing dark feelings. The grandmother takes the role of a dominant male in a patriarch society, owner of the submissive domestic women. Towards the end of the story, the grandmother seems to acquire the same distant and cold feeling when she asks her lover to kill the grandmother, and then lives with the wealth accumulated from the prostitution without caring for her lover, abandoned and used by her. The story touches real social problems of intergeneration conflicts, domestic violence, women's sexual exploitation, and human values deterioration.